Warm greetings, Code Monkeys and fellow VEDSies. Welcome back to CodedLockFilms. So there's this thing that people say about Lord of the Rings, and it's an exceptionally stupid thing to say about Lord of the Rings. Whenever I hear Lord of the Rings brought up, I almost always hear the following question.
Why didn't the Fellowship just fly to Mordor on the Eagles?
This is a legitimate question, but I almost never hear it brought up as a question. When most people bring up this question, they aren't actually looking for an answer. They bring up this question because it's this supposedly enormous plot hole in Lord of the Rings, and people like the smug feeling they get when they point out plot holes in something successful. But most people haven't actually thought about this question. They just read it in a BuzzFeed article at some point, and it makes them feel smart when they tell other people about it. But what people forget about finding a plot hole is that after you find something that looks like a plot hole, you're supposed to think about it and analyze it to determine whether or not it is actually a plot hole. As a general rule, I try not to rag on other people's opinions like this. But if you think that the Eagles in The Lord of the Rings are a plot hole, you are wrong. Let us examine why you are wrong in two different ways. One way is to use information from the books. The other is to go solely by what you'd know if you'd only seen the movies, which, let's be honest, is a lot of people. And to be clear, if you have only seen the movies, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. They are fantastic movies. They are just as deserving of your time and attention as the books. I am not a book-only elitist. I do not think you are stupid if you have not read the books. That being said, first I am going to look at this question using information from the books. What you wouldn't know if you've only seen the movies is that the Eagles in Lord of the Rings are not just a bunch of really big birds. They are a sentient race, just like elves, dwarves, hobbits, men, orcs, etc. They think, they feel, they have their own language, they have their own culture. And a part of that culture is the fact that they consider allowing others to ride them to be a little bit beneath them. They think it's demeaning to be ridden. They liken it to being treated like common mules, kind of like the centaurs from Harry Potter. You may ask then why they're willing to let Gandalf ride them. Well, it's all because he once saved the Lord of the Eagles from a mortal wound. Basically, they owe him a few favors. There are a lot of beings in Middle-earth that owe Gandalf a few favors. Dude gets around. That's why they rescue him from Saruman's tower, and it's also why they rescue him from the goblins in The Hobbit. The reason they also rescue the dwarves and Bilbo is partially because they're Gandalf's allies, but it also has a lot to do with robbing the bad guys of their sport. You could also make the argument that the Eagles really ought to realize that the destruction of Sauron is much more important than their foolish pride. And you would be right. They should realize that, but they don't, and the Eagles are not alone in that regard. A big theme of Lord of the Rings in general is that the goodly races of the world need to just get over their respective pride and band together to help one another out if Sauron is ever going to be defeated. Nobody in Middle-earth thinks Sauron is their problem until he shows up on their doorstep. They are wrong to think this. The story very clearly demonstrates that they are wrong to think this. But they still think it, and the Eagles are no different. That's why the Fellowship doesn't ride the Eagles to Mordor in the book. But again, for the sake of argument, let's just say that you have never read the books and you don't know any of this. Never once do the movies indicate that the Eagles are intelligent, sentient creatures. We never see them speak, and their culture and even the basic location of their home is completely unknown to us. For all we know, when Gandalf sends those moths off to the Eagles, he's just having the moth carry an enchantment that will bring the Eagles where he wants them to be. If that's the case, then let's defeat this plot hole with simple logic. One thing that the movies do tell us very clearly is that Sauron's eye is capable of seeing for thousands of miles in any direction when he wants to. To quote Lord Elrond, Sauron's forces are massing in the east. His eye is fixed on Rivendell. His eye is fixed on Rivendell. In case you aren't familiar with the geography of Middle-earth, the Tower of Barad-dûr, which is where Sauron's eye is located, is right here. Rivendell is right here. That is a very long distance. The ring has to travel a very long way to get to Mordor, and the only reason it is able to get there is because Sauron does not know about it. All he knows is that the ring is currently in the possession of a hobbit bearing the name of Baggins. Frodo and Sam never travel in the open if possible, and when such travel cannot be avoided, they take extreme care to pass unnoticed. Even when traveling across the dead marshes, they still hop from cover to cover as much as they can possibly manage. They keep it secret. they keep it safe. If the Fellowship had gotten on the Eagles and flown to Mordor, yes, they would have gotten there faster, but it's still a very, very long journey. Sauron's eye would have seen them coming weeks in advance, and he would make preparations. He would outfit his entire army with bows and crossbows, for one thing. On top of that, he would have them build things like catapults, ballistas, trebuchets, net launchers. Plus, he's also got the Nazgul on giant, flying fell beasts. The Fellowship would arrive at Mordor and fly straight into the waiting arms of an army of millions of orcs, all of them trained and outfitted for the sole purpose of taking down aerial targets. The Fellowship would be shot out of the sky faster than you can say "you shall not pass." One does not simply walk into Mordor, and one does not simply fly there either. I'll see you tomorrow.